Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Bobby Sylvester, joined as always by Mike Tagliere, and we're on Twitter at BobbyFantasyPro and at Mike Tagliere NFL. Tags, how's it going, man?
It's good, dude. I was just talking off the air with our guest today, saying that I feel like it's the last week of school in my senior year. You know, like when I never ditched in high school. I wasn't cool enough to ditch, but I did during that final week, and it just feels like, you know, like a big weight has been lifted. We're in week 16. It's championship week. I just feel awesome. I don't know. It's hard to explain, Bobby, but it just feels like the last.
Dude, do not be ditching people this week on the championship game analysis. Our guest today is Jeff Ratcliffe of ProFootballFocus.com. He's on Twitter at his name, Jeff Ratcliffe. Jeff, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, this is the time of year, I don't get senioritis at this time of year. I get really antsy to start diving into the NFL draft. We're not that far away. And I tell you what, I met Kyler after he won the Heisman, humble brag, and he's not very tall. So I met Baker last year, and Baker's about the same height as me. I go about 6'2". Baker may be a half inch shorter than me, but Kyler, I was towering over him. So it may look like baseball might be the right decision for him. But either way, it's an exciting year for this NFL draft. I think there's a lot of underrated talent in this class.
I'm really excited about the class. Jeff, I love Clayton Thorson. I've been hyping him up for like 2 years now. I can't wait to see where he lands because I think he's going to be a great second or third round quarterback pick. I don't like the first round quarterbacks this year.
Haskins is appealing, though, just because of how well he played this season. I do think he's a day one pick. But, you know, with every year, though, there are quarterbacks who right now we think are going to be day two guys that just have meteoric rises. So maybe your boy has one of those rises. I don't know. Quarterbacks we know so prioritized, and the way that the draft looks right now, you could have maybe the top 5 teams who have just taken a quarterback. So there's a lot of moving parts. I'm already geeking out over it, but we got to talk about week 16.
Guys, I already took a nap today. Oh. It's like we're recording this. It's 11 o'clock Central Time. I woke up. I did my morning routine and stuff. I had some eggnog, non-alcoholic, and then just went to sleep. And I feel great. So I'm pumped up about this show. Let's get rolling. Before we do, though, I want to talk about the sponsor of today's show, PristineAuction.com. Tags, I don't know if you know this or not, but I got you a gift from Pristine Auction. It's going to be on your door in a minute. Tabby's going to wrap it for you. So it's a great place to get a gift. And here's my trick, okay? This is what I love to do. If you get your gift a little bit late, so what? Dudes don't care if their gift is like wrapped up or whatever. Just print off a picture of the gift and say, hey, it's going to arrive in 5 days. It's not too late. If you want to go that route, you can get something from Pristine Auction, right, Tags?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned that. I got you something as well. And I would be interested. So I searched for Stephen Morris stuff and nobody has it. that would have been happening. But I'm curious if anybody knows what I got, Bobby. If you guys have a guess, let me know on Twitter.
And guys, Pristine Auction has hundreds of lots that end every day. In fact, yesterday they had way more than that because their weekly auctions ended. You can check out what they have for you. There's something for a fan of every single team. Put it in your cave. You're going to love it. And everything's guaranteed authentic from only the most trusted sources. You're not going to believe some of the values you can get. I saw a signed Odell Beckham LSU helmet for $92 yesterday. A signed Aaron Donald Rams jersey for $98 yesterday. There's some great values out there. You can get stuff under $50 as well if you want to. So check out what they have for you on PristineAuction.com. And we've got a contest going on right now, too. You can get a signed David Johnson helmet. We're going to be giving away to one lucky listener by going to FantasyPros.com/contest. Again, that's PristineAuction.com, PRISTINE. And make sure to let them know Fantasy Pro sent you. That way we can keep doing these giveaways. All right, guys, so we are going to get into it, and we'll start at the running back position. What do we do with somebody like Tevin Coleman going up against Carolina? I don't love this matchup. I do love the Ito Smiths out, though, Jeff. I've got him right now as my RB23, so right on the fringe. Where do you have him ranked?
I'm going to go all in on Jeremy Langford instead. I was like, oh, yeah, he's still a human being. All right. But no, I think I'm right with you. Last week was a product of matchup. So it's so easy for fantasy players to look at the box score, look at the fantasy points and go, oh, my God, Tevin Coleman, he's finally emerging. But that was just a beautiful matchup for him. So we see now going up against Carolina much better against the run. I mean, you saw Luke Kuechly, the spotlight was on this guy on Monday night, and obviously he's incredible. He's incredible with what he does, and that's a big part of how they stop the run. So, yeah, I think the volume is there, but the problem is the matchup isn't that great. And we've seen Coleman get 17, 18, 19 touches and not be efficient as well in the past. So I think that you're about spot on. I think I actually have him. Yeah, I have him at the exact same spot, 23.
Tags, what are you looking at with Tevin Coleman? Would you start him over somebody like Jordan Howard against San Francisco?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think we should depend on 15 plus touches out of him. I mean, anytime you can get that out of a running back, he's almost by default going to be in the top 24 running backs, unless it's a matchup with maybe the Saints, the Ravens, or I think Carolina is a stout defense. And I'm not saying that, I think it's a matchup you should attack in DFS or anything like that. But Tevin Coleman is the only running back who has totaled more than 100 yards on the ground against them this year. That was way back earlier in the season. I mean, Carolina still has, technically something to play for, but it's a defense. They put everything they had into last week, and unfortunately it didn't pan out. But yeah, Tevin Coleman, to me, I think you should consider him like a low-end RB2 at worst, considering the amount of touches he'll get.
I would definitely prefer not to play him. I guess if you have to, he's not a bad play because he's going to get the touches with Smith out. But I'd rather play someone like Elijah McGuire going up against Green Bay. Even James White against Buffalo. I know he's been struggling lately, but, with New England being the offense they are, I don't think they're going to score, one touchdown the past 2 weeks. I don't think they're going to continue that trend. I think White gets involved again. I would trust him a little bit more than Tevin Coleman against Carolina.
That backfield split with New England has just gotten uglier and uglier, and they haven't been able to run the ball great as of late. And his role has declined ever since. You have Burkhead back, you have Edelman, you have Gronk healthy, you have Gordon. James White to me is just he's like that boomer bust RB3 play. He's like a guy you put in there and you're hoping that he scores a touchdown. And if he doesn't, he's probably going to let you down.
Don't you think he has more of a ceiling than Tevin Coleman, though?
I don't know if I'd say that. Jeff, what's your take on that?
I always err towards the side of volume, and I think the volume is going to be in Coleman's favor. Got to tell you this, week 8, Julian Edelman went off against this Bills defense. And for me, I know we're not talking about wide receivers yet, but chalk in DFS. I'm going to be using him in my cash game lineups. And I really like him again because Trey White will be on Josh Gordon. Now, Trey White wasn't on Kenny Golladay. He was only on him about half of his routes, so that really wasn't Trey White. But the last time that we saw Gordon and White face each other, White shut down Gordon. So I think it's all day Edelman, maybe a little Gronk. And that's really the factor. It's not Sony Michel, it's not Rex Burkhead. It's that the targets are in that short and intermediate area of the field are going to Edelman and Gronk now.
For what it's worth, last time James White played the Bills, he had 10 receptions for 79 yards and a score. Also got some work on the ground. I know his role is diminished, but I like the matchup for him. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you guys 3 names, and you guys tell me who you would pick out of them if you had to decide between these guys. Damian Williams at Seattle. Leonard Fournette, this is a tricky one, at Miami. And then let's go Jamal Williams at the Jets. Jeff, you're first.
Well, this one comes with is Spencer Ware definitely going to be out? Because if he is, then yeah, I'm going Damian Williams, no question about it. If Spencer Ware is playing, then I think I go Jamal Williams just because Leonard Fournette. Okay, the guy comes out and says, yeah, it was game plan to not give me the ball. Okay. I'm supposed to trust you now in this contest, where at least I know Jamal Williams is going to get the ball because they're not going to give it. I would be shocked if Capri Bibbs came in and got 20 touches. So I'm going to err towards the side of caution and towards the side of volume with the fantasy championships on the line.
I'm with you. I thought I was a little bit crazy to say Williams over Fournette, Jamal Williams, that is. So I was really hoping one of you two would validate my opinion so I could go out and say, oh yeah, I'm with you guys without sounding like a crazy hyperbolic idiot. Tags, what do you think, man? Jamal Williams in your top 15 running backs this week with the workload he's going to get?
He's not top 15 for me. He's top 20, so he's in that 15 to 20 range. But Fournette's an interesting case, man. I mean, if you made it through last week with Leonard Fournette, it's pretty tough because, you have a matchup with Miami. I mean, each of the last 4 teams that have played against them have totaled at least 22 carries. I don't see any way that Miami's offense moves the ball in Jacksonville's defense, which, by the way, is still top 5 in the NFL. They're still dominant. So it's this should be I don't see the game script getting out of hand here for Fournette, and they should rack up. I mean, I would think that the Jags are going to run the ball 30 times here. To know that TJ Yeldon didn't get many touches the last 2 weeks, I think it was somewhat of the game plan. And this is something that I'm writing in my notes this week, saying that I need to pay attention to the press conferences because I need to know if this is a plan. Someone has to ask Marone if he's going to play Fournette the entire game, right? It's really tough to pass up on this matchup because Miami, they have allowed some very big games to running backs this year. So Man, this is a stumper. Like, and I understand that people don't want to hear that, but sometimes we don't have the information that we wish we did. I think Jamal Williams is a safer play. I would expect Spencer Ware to be on the field. So I guess I'd rank them Jamal Williams, Leonard Fournette, Damian Williams. But as Jeff mentioned, if Spencer Ware is out, I think Williams is definitely in the conversation with those guys.
And the Jags need to lose this game too, let's be honest. They know that. They're in the top 5 picks right now, and if they lose to Miami, they've pretty much got it locked up because they're going to lose to Houston next week as well. I don't know why they would give Leonard Fournette another 25 carries. Just give him a dozen carries, let him be active so it looks like they're kind of trying, and just lose the game, right?
It's such a weird dynamic.
Teams do this. You know that they do this. That's exactly why they did it last week. How can you possibly say you're trying to win if you're only giving Leonard Fournette 11 carries?
What can you confidently say that you feel about Fournette this week, Jeff? Do you think that he's guaranteed? I mean, even if he is going to split carries, I think he's locked into. I think he should get 15 touches this game. And because of that, I have a hard time moving him out of my top 18 running backs.
I think that's fair. If I'm looking at some of these other guys where I can, feel more confident, like somebody like Gus Edwards, I feel more confident that he's going to touch the ball more than Fournette will. So, it's true coin flip, but Tags, I got to give you a shout out here on what you just said. And this is so important because a lot of times in the fantasy industry, people give advice and they just sort of shoot from the hip and they claim like they know something that they don't really know. And I think, mad respect to you for what you just said. That we don't know. We don't freaking know. We don't know what the Jags are going to do here. And because of that uncertainty, I don't want to roll into a fantasy championship with Fournette where I have some of these other guys that I am more confident in. Like I'm more confident in Tevin Coleman's workload, for example. So I'm probably going to roll in with him if I had that decision. Now, of course, elephant in the room here, if you drafted Leonard Fournette in the first round, chances are you might not be in the fantasy championships right now, so you may not have that decision to make.
I'm not so sure about Edwards, though, because of the game script, right? I mean, the game script's been fine the last 5 weeks where he's got, 16 to 21 carries. I don't know if that happened against the Chargers. Now, Tags, I know you agree with this because you think Kenneth Dixon is a fine flex play this week, or at least if you're really desperate. Where do you have Edwards ranked?
Edwards, for me, he's like someone that I have him in the RB3 range where I think it's a risky start for him this week because we've seen game script on his side a lot in a lot of these games, and even the Chiefs game was relatively close, but going on the road against the Chargers, a team that's going to have 9 days to prepare in between these games, and a defense that's played much better. I mean, they're up the middle, losing Corey Legit, losing Denzel Perriman, their run defense has started to struggle a little bit, but if there's a game where it's there's negative game script, Gus Edwards is going to take the biggest hit because Dixon's been a little involved in the passing game. I'd be curious to see if Ty Montgomery is going to be inactive for this game again. But Edwards is he's a guy, if the game stays close, I'm confident in saying that he's going to finish as an RB, a top 24 play. But if the game goes negatively, and the spread in this game right now is the Chargers by 5.5, I believe, that's a concern because if they fall behind, by 10 points, I think that Baltimore abandons Gus Edwards and they move forward more with a Kenneth Dixon type running back. So he's that risky high-end RB3. I mean, he should come with a decent floor because I don't think there's any way that the Chargers score 21 points and go up 21-0 on the Ravens. So I think that he's relatively safe for 12 to 15 touches, and that kind of keeps him in the high-end RB3 territory.
The line has moved. It's 4.5 now, and the reason why I think the script actually is a Gus script is it's a 44 over/under. That sounds like a very, a clock control game for the Ravens. And the beauty is if they're able to at least do what they want to do in the first half, the way that Gus works with Lamar in that backfield, that's really where all of this success has come from is those two guys together. That's just not something that Kenneth Dixon is going to be able to do. Is Kenneth Dixon more explosive than Gus? Absolutely. But I don't know if they're going to abandon the run as quickly as a lot of people think.
So, guys, the Rams signed C.J. Anderson. I've been saying all along, I think that, Tags, we basically had a fight about this, right? I said John Kelly's my favorite waiver wire pickup this week. I think this doesn't look so good for Gurley if they're signing C.J. Anderson. If he plays, is he an absolute must-start? I've got him in my top 10 if he starts. Jeff, is that where you would have him as well?
I don't know if I go that high. I do agree with you, though, that it's clearly him. It's not going to be C.J. Anderson look like 10 years older than Frank Gore, and he's like 10 years younger than Frank Gore. Well, he's like 8 years younger than Frank Gore. So it's obviously not going to be him, but you're right. Anytime these signings are made, whether it's a guy off the practice squad or a guy off the street, that's typically the team already knows what's going to happen, and I would not be surprised at all if Gurley sits. And Justin Davis, for what it's worth, is a special teamer. That's why he's active and Kelly isn't. I would say, man, Kelly would probably be in the top 15, 16 just because the matchup is so beautiful. But the problem is we just don't know what to expect from him. Only 2 carries on the season, and he hasn't, he didn't really have an opportunity. It's not good or bad. I don't think we can judge off those 2 carries. But just the matchup and the opportunity, I think, is what would put him there. But I can't go top 10.
Okay. I mean, I saw him run in the preseason. I understand it was against lesser competition, but he looked electric. I love this offense, obviously. They're struggling lately, but teams stack the box against them less than any other team in the NFL, and that excites me for Kelly. I think he's going to get, if he gets 15 touches against Arizona, I would take anybody with 15 touches against Arizona, let alone someone in this offense. So, Tags, you have him as a must start, right?
Yeah, Kelly would definitely. He'd be in like the top. I think I'd have him at RB13 if Gurley's out, and I am expecting Gurley to not play this game. Like I don't, the Rams do need a win because like a lot of people were like, oh, it's the Saints and the Rams have the number 1 and number 2 seeds. That's not a lock anymore because like the Rams lost to the Bears, which means that the Bears should have that tiebreaker. So if the Rams were to lose this game or week 17, which is unlikely, it's very unlikely, but if they were and the Bears won their 2 games, the Bears are the number 2 seed, and all of a sudden the Rams have to play. They don't have that bye anymore. So I think they do want to win. CJ Anderson, the signing, makes all the sense in the world just to have some depth on there because Malcolm Brown's obviously gone. Against the Cardinals this year, running backs have averaged, I think it's 33 touches per game, which is just like, it's the most in the NFL and it's not really all that close. So it's when you disperse the touches among the running backs, knowing that Jared Goff has really struggled as of late, knowing that the strength of the Arizona defense is the secondary, I just feel like Kelly is going to get too many touches to avoid. It's kind of like a situation where like Justin Jackson last week against the Chiefs. And obviously that worked out for a lot of fantasy owners. So we haven't seen much of Kelly, correct. But, talking about running backs and like the idea of getting one that's attached to a high scoring offense, a potent offense and a good matchup. So yeah, I think he would be a must start. It's very unlikely you have 3 running backs in your roster who are better plays than him.
Guys, I know this is kind of a look squirrel moment, but I saw this and I can't go without talking about it. Apparently, Nathan Peterman is getting a lot of interest from multiple teams around the league. What in the world?
That's an agent drumming up interest. I'm not buying it.
Apparently, John Gruden is really excited about him. Ryan Talbot is reporting on Twitter. Oh, man, this is crazy. I just don't understand. Especially when Stephen Morris is sitting out there, right? Okay, I've got 3 more running backs to talk about. This is if you're really desperate. I don't know what situation you could possibly be in. Maybe you've got Todd Gurley. He's on your championship roster, and you need a running back last minute. You can't get Kelly because your opponent picked him up. So you've got to decide between these couple guys who might be available to you. Jeff Wilson going up against Chicago. Kenneth Dixon going up against the Chargers. And let's go Duke Johnson against Cincinnati.
You should throw Kalen Ballage in there because I think a lot of people are going to like pick up Kalen Ballage and think to start him this week. I'm not one of those people, but I think we should at least mention him on this show.
His ECR, and that's expert consensus ranking, is number 27. So a lot of people think he is, flex worthy this week. I agree with you. I would not pick him of this bunch. Jeff, who would you go with?
Man, I think I might just take a knee. I don't know. I mean, because Wilson will get some touches, but Breda showed that, even though he's banged up, he's the leader in that backfield. I think Ballage is interesting because the Dolphins tipped their hand when they signed Frank Gore. This wasn't it wasn't a Jonathan Stewart signing where you just knew the guy was, on his last legs. Frank Gore came off a pretty decent season last year as an early down runner. They're just not confident in Kenny Drake in early down situations. Ballage has some deficiencies, there's no doubt about it, but he also showed if he's given Frank Gore's workload, he has the potential of breaking some big plays. So, it's a Hail Mary. I have him, I'm not as high as ECR. I have him at 33 right now. So, I mean, he's in the mix there. Who was the other option?
The other ones are just horrible, though. Jeff Wilson, Kenneth Dixon, who would be my pick, and then Duke Johnson.
Yeah, I probably would go with you. I probably would, just because I kind of have a broke back spot for Kenneth Dixon. I don't know how to quit him. and he's at least got some upside. And especially if you're in half point or full PPR, he does add as a receiver. So yeah, I agree with you. It's just not a good position to be in this week. Hopefully we're able to pick up some of these other running backs.
Yeah, last 3 weeks he's averaging 10 touches per game. I think he'll probably get that, and I would rather have 10 touches from Kenneth Dixon than 5 to 15 from Kalen Ballage. Who knows what we're going to get, especially going up against Jacksonville. Tags, Dixon's your guy too?
Yeah, Dixon would be my choice of the bunch, just because like he's being mixed in first and second down, and then he's getting some work in the passing game. So if the game does go negatively, it like obviously increases his value. But ideally, none of them are great options. And Jeff, I want to ask you one last question before we move to wide receiver. Let's pretend someone has James Conner on their roster, and he's limited in practice all week. They say he's questionable, and let's pretend that they say, yeah, he's going to be active and he's going to be on a snap count. He's gonna share time with Jalen Samuels. It's not a great matchup against the Saints. You can't run the ball against them. They've allowed, I think it's like 182 less rushing yards than any other team in the NFL. You can't get it done through the air, so it might better suit Samuels in this matchup. Let's pretend you have James Conner and Tariq Cohen, Gus Edwards on your roster. Would you sit James Conner?
I would not, and ultimately, why I would make that move there, why I would start Conner is I'm hoping for red zone work, in particular, goal line inside the 5-yard line work, because yes, it's going to be tough to score against them. I mean, if you had Christian McCaffrey, you got kind of bailed out by a rando passing touchdown. Otherwise, that would have been not a brutal week, but it wouldn't have been a great week for you. So there is that. That run defense is no joke. There's no doubt about it. But I just can't fade that guy. And I know that teams have gone out and said, okay, he'll be on a pitch count, and then we'll see a guy, play more snaps than what you would expected. So, and I really don't trust Mike Tomlin with what he has to say that much. So I think I would just roll with Conner.
All right, guys, let's move on over to the wide receiver position. Before we do, though, I want to remind you all that we've got a new website that we just launched, bettingpros.com, and we're doing the same type of accuracy competition. Tags, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's just like the expert platform where we go through and we keep track of the accuracy of all the analysts that do their picks. So just like that, you're wondering, who do I play? And it gives you the expert consensus ranking saying, this is who you should start based on, 120 analysts. And now it's like we have that on the betting side where it's like it's got that consensus and it'll give you the projections you want. And honestly, you could even share it, like break it down and say, okay, this is the top 20% of experts. Who do you want to choose games from and what are their favorite picks? You can go in and sort it that way. Bettingpros.com it's a new thing we're doing with betting becoming a bigger and bigger deal and legal around the country. So it's something that Bobby, myself, and Jeff have taken part in.
I've refrained from talking about the standings for the past 14 weeks because you were beating me for 14 straight weeks, Tags. I just passed you this week. I don't know if you noticed or not.
I did not notice, unfortunately. I last week was not a very good week for me. I think I went like 5-8 in my picks. It wasn't great.
Let's give our pick of the week, and I'll start us off. I'm 64% on the year in under picks, and most of those have come in division games. I really like the under 47. Atlanta faced Carolina. After watching Cam Newton play with that shoulder, Atlanta's defense has been playing so much better. I definitely like the under in this game. I think it's going to be a low-scoring one. Jeff, what do you think about that? Atlanta, Carolina, under 47.
Under 47. Yeah, I don't mind that. I think that's a decent number, but yeah, I'd take the under too.
Tags, who are you taking for your pick of the week?
I'm going to stick with the over-under concept, and I'm going to go with Pittsburgh, New Orleans. I'm going to take the over 53.5 right now. That's just far too low for these teams. I understand that the Saints haven't looked great, but they've been on the road the past 3 weeks. They're returning home. What the Saints defense allows in terms of like the production that they allow to opposing offenses, it suits the Steelers offense really, really well. So I do expect this game to be somewhat of a shootout.
Here's the thing, though. The Saints might have the best defense in the NFL over the past month. Does that concern you?
In a way, but again, their defense has gotten better, but it's gonna come down to pressure. And if they can't get pressure on the quarterback, and it's gonna really, and like Roethlisberger, his offensive line protects him better than almost anybody's. With Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster, they present a unique situation for a Saints defense that they really don't have two cornerbacks to cover those guys. Eli Apple and PJ Williams would be left with Juju Smith-Schuster if they decided to put Lattimore on AB. So, I just think they're presented with a really unique opportunity here. And I just think both teams match up really well against each other in terms of what their offense can do. And if we were to look back, go back 5 weeks and say, oh, the over under between New Orleans and Pittsburgh in New Orleans is 53.5, I think people would have been jumping all over it.
Jeff, I know that you guys grade all the players over there at Pro Football Focus. Has Eli Apple improved over the season, or is he still kind of just a turd?
Well, I think he has over the last 2 weeks in particular. He's seen a lot of volume thrown into his coverage. That's the challenge. And sometimes, these guys can look a little bit worse just because of the volume numbers than actually how they're playing. I would not say he's standout by any means, but he is not one of the worst corners in the league, and not even close. Right now, let's see, I'm pulling up his where he grades out. So he's at 72, so he's about midpoint. Marshawn Lattimore at 24 right now, so he's obviously still having a pretty decent season.
When people are seeing these ratings on your site, would you say it's kind of similar to like Madden ratings where, you said a 72 is average? What is really good?
Well, 72 is his rank. He's at 64.8, so that is around about average. Really good would be 90 or above for these guys. So right now at corner, I don't even know if there is anybody who's over it. See, Stephon Gilmore's our number one corner. Let me see what his grade is currently. He's at 90.2. So that maybe even anything over 85 for certain positions is really going to be at that elite level.
Yeah. Do you have any picks you want to share?
This week, I haven't made any picks just yet, but I will always throw this out there. I'm not particularly good at picking against the spread. Where I think the fantasy future is in player props. That is where you can. It's an easy translation from fantasy to gambling, and you don't have to worry about what your opponent has. You really, your outcomes are pretty limited. It's either you're right or you're wrong, because you can be right in fantasy and still lose, right? But here, you're right or you're wrong, and you're good to go. And so for me, always focusing on the players, I never really focus too much on the team outcomes. So I'm not doing well this year there, but I'm at for prop bets, I'm at 64% for the year. So
Nice.
That is killing it, man.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on over to the wide receiver position, where right now early returns and ECR have Robbie Anderson as a top 20 wide receiver against Green Bay. I know he's getting a lot of targets, but Jeff, do you buy this?
Somewhat. I think he's finally on the same page with Sam Darnold. This is the Robbie Anderson we expected to see earlier in the year when he was drafted by a lot of people as a potential wide receiver too. Of course, that was his chemistry with Josh McCown, really, that I think a lot of people were banking on. And that obviously didn't play out earlier in the year. But the beauty to Anderson is he is the best receiver on the team. He's the guy who can do the most for them. I think he's more of a downfield threat, in most offenses. But in this offense, he has to be that kind of X, that number one. He can be a red zone presence for them. And obviously has the speed to take the top off of defense. And he's really continued to improve. So we got to give him credit where credit's due as well. I think he is in play as a wide receiver too this week.
And another guy that's right there, ECR number 25, my boy Robert Foster. Tags, what do you think? Foster or Robbie Anderson if you're picking someone up?
I will go with Robbie Anderson over Foster.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, Foster, he's kind of like that deep threat, right? Like he's going to have to catch a long ball in order to pay off, and he plays I think it's 82% of his snaps in the perimeter, which means, if the Patriots choose to shadow anyone, I doubt they do that this week. They're probably going to play sides, but if they do, Stephon Gilmore is going to be on him, and Gilmore, as Jeff just mentioned, is one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. I just don't feel like it's a great matchup. I feel like this is a ball control style offense for the Patriots this week. They just want to come away with a win, get back on track. I'm not buying the Foster hype. The targets aren't ridiculous. Kenny Golladay last week had a brutal matchup against the Bills, right? But I told people, you have to play him. If you have a guy that's getting 8 to 12 targets, basically that's what you could project him for, you have to play those guys. And Foster's not one of those guys. I think Isaiah McKenzie might actually be the better Bills wide receiver this week. I think he comes with a higher floor. He might not come with the ceiling. You're taking an undrafted wide receiver playing with Josh Allen in New England. That's for the championship. Jeff, could you do that?
No, definitely not.
I'm just looking at it, man. 94 yards in 4 of his last 5 games. That is hard to ignore. With that said, we've seen people do that before. Taylor Gabriel back with the Falcons, and then he was a bust. But then Tyreek Hill, obviously a very different type of player, but I've been impressed with the kid. He's really all they have in Buffalo. Zay Jones is not getting it done. We'll see about McKenzie, but I think he's turned into their number one receiver. For what it's worth, though, Robbie Anderson does have quite a few more targets over those last 3 weeks, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, J.R. Alexander, like the cornerback that's going to be matched up with Anderson, he's been really good. I know that the last few weeks, I mean, like Julio Jones looked great and all, but he made some circus grabs. Like Julio Jones is a freak, okay? He's the best receiver in the NFL. I've been saying that. I wouldn't expect a rookie to be able to hang with that. Robbie Anderson, he has struggled in tough matchups this year, and I know him and Darnold are developing a better relationship, but I'm not even a huge fan of Anderson this week, but I would play him over Foster.
Jeff, do you guys have Julio Jones rated as your number 1 wide receiver?
Right now, I think so. Let me check. Because he has been absolutely phenomenal. He accomplished the rare feat. Actually, DeAndre Hopkins right now is number 1.
Yeah, he's been amazing too.
But he scored that touchdown for Jones against Patrick Peterson. Just awesome. Patrick Peterson's been phenomenal this year. So for him to do that, but yeah, you have DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, and Keenan Allen are actually tied for 3rd.
Sounds good. That sounds good to me. All right, let's go Courtland Sutton right now. His ECR is number 28 against Oakland. I know a lot of people don't want to play him, but the majority of the experts agree that he is a solid wide receiver 3. Jeff, is that where you have him as well?
It is. Just need him to get healthy. He was one Jabril Peppers' beautiful play away from a touchdown last week as well, and everybody would have been thinking very differently. He's closer to the back end of the wide receiver 3s, but I think it's the end zone targets. It's the ultimate usage. He's got more upside than Deshaun Hamilton. Deshaun Hamilton's doing a nice job, but I'm still shooting for that higher ceiling here with Sutton.
All right, let's go 3 names. All 3 of these names just give me a big time headache. Tags, I'm going to let you go first here, okay? Josh Reynolds at Arizona. Curtis Samuel with Cam Newton as his quarterback. Face Atlanta, it's a good matchup, but they didn't do anything last week. And then let's say Keenan Allen is ruled out. Right now it looks like he's a game-time decision. He's ruled out. You got Mike Williams against Baltimore. Which of the 3 are you taking, Tags?
I'll take the touchdown upside with Mike Williams. I mean, it's not a good matchup against Baltimore, but Reynolds' matchup against the Cardinals isn't great either. He hasn't been very good. Like Jared Goff over the last 2 weeks has targeted him, I think it's like up to 19 times, and he's been picked off on 4 of them. So I think he needs to learn to stop going to Josh Reynolds, that he has Robert Woods, he has Brandon Cooks.
And even Gerald Everett's been fine.
Yeah, Gerald Everett has seen 7 targets in each of the last 2 weeks, but I mean, his matchup isn't even very good this week. But anyways, I would take Williams here. I'm just going to take the touchdown upside. He's like the type of guy that, we could be talking about like Kenny Galladay-like player, where it's like, you throw the ball in his general vicinity. If he's in a one-on-one matchup, he can win that no matter the cornerback matchup. And let's not pretend that Jimmy Smith has been great this year. Like, for whatever reason, they're still playing him like alongside of Brandon Carr and Marlon Humphrey, who have been better. So I think Mike Williams is the play. You go for the touchdowns. His quarterback's healthy. That Baltimore stops the run extremely well. So I'd go Mike Williams.
Jeff, who are you going with out of this group?
I think it's easy. It's Mike Williams, not even close if Allen sits. I will say that Josh Reynolds was targeted 4 times in the end zone last week, which is just an enormous number for one game. But as Tags pointed out, not converting them, some of the interceptions, interceptions in the NFL are always tricky because we want to place the blame always on the quarterback, but a lot of times the receiver is also at fault or primarily at fault, and some of those were certainly on Reynolds. So yeah, Williams, if Keenan Allen doesn't play, Williams is a wide receiver 2 for me. If Keenan Allen does play, I still think Williams is a wide receiver 3 play this week.
I like him there too. Williams would be my pick if Keenan Allen was out. Right now, as it is, I would pick Curtis Samuel over these guys. I mean, Curtis Samuel has touchdown upside too. I don't know what's going on with Cam Newton. It was ugly, but if you want to talk about someone who can get in the end zone, it's not the same way as Mike Williams going up and getting it, but Curtis Samuel's a threat to break any play.
He is, man, but that passing game looks so bad last week. And Atlanta, to their credit, has done a lot better as of late. Their secondary has played a lot better. So I keep like the spreadsheet of like, if you combine the wide receiver 1, the wide receiver 2, the wide receiver 3, and the tight end from an offense, like every single week, over the last 6 games, they haven't allowed more than 156 yards to the combination of all those players. So they definitely been playing better. I mean, the volume is down, like quarterbacks aren't throwing a whole lot against them. But yeah, with Cam Newton dinged up, I have to knock Curtis Samuel down quite a bit.
Let's go one more group of 3 names. Jeff, you're first on this one. Chris Godwin at Dallas, who just destroyed Andrew Luck last week. And, Marlon Mack won them that game. Sterling Shepard against Indianapolis, who shut out Dak Prescott last week. and then Golden Tate face Houston. Do you like any of these as a wide receiver 3 flex play, or who do you like the best?
I'm going to toss Golden Tate. I just have no confidence in Nick Foles whatsoever. He throws up those dead ducks. He really likes to look downfield. He's not a check down guy. We saw that last week with Alshon. That shouldn't have been a surprise for anybody. The Eagles trading for Tate is one of the few misses that this team has had over the last couple of years, but they traded for him when they needed help at corner, and they really haven't used Tate the way he should be used. So I'm going to toss him. I think it comes down to Godwin, Shepard, and obviously with Odell Beckham Jr. not practicing yet, we don't necessarily know what's going to happen there. So Shepard has some appeal, but I think I lean just slightly towards Godwin, hoping that we see Byron Jones more so on Mike Evans so that Godwin can get open a little bit.
Yeah, Chris Godwin, the last 2 weeks, 13 targets, 13 receiving yards. Everyone knows I love Chris Godwin, but for whatever reason, it has been really bad. I still trust him, though. I trust him against Dallas.
The weather was terrible in that Saints game, and then it was a terrible matchup against Baltimore. So I'm not going to I don't think that you should totally cross off Chris Godwin. It is a tough matchup against Dallas. Dallas has done a great job with wide receivers this year, but if alignment remains as it's been, Mike Williams is going to see Byron Jones the most, which means Godwin actually has the best matchup on the field. So I think that he should be in the wide receiver 3 conversation this week. So I think he's of that group. He's definitely the one I'd want to play.
If you can't get one of those top players, Robert Foster or Robbie Anderson, who are you going with, okay? Deshaun Hamilton at Oakland, Anthony Miller at San Francisco, Chris Conley at Seattle. Let's throw John Ross in there, too, against Cleveland. Jeff, you can go first.
Hamilton, pretty easy for me. I think the target volume there, it seems like they've just sort of inserted him into Manny Sanders' role, and he's getting that volume. And let's be clear too, this is a kid who maybe flew under the radar for some heading into the draft process, but you can't really fault him for playing in that Penn State offense that was really obviously dominated by Saquon Barkley and lackluster quarterback play. He's a good football player. I think we're going to now for a few years be talking about Deshaun Hamilton as a PPR guy. So out of that group, I think it's pretty easy. Risky with Conley, risky with Ross.
A lot of people I think are going to turn to Tim Patrick because they've seen all the targets he's getting. It is big time Deshaun Hamilton over Patrick, right, Jeff?
Yes, absolutely. He's a better player just as a whole. Patrick, this is a great story. There's no doubt about it, but he's just a better player as a whole. And the role in that offense with Case Keenum, I think, just works really well.
Tags, who do you like of this group, or anybody else in this range, 40 to 60 that you're fond of?
I think Taylor Gabriel's interesting. You had Ahkello Witherspoon went down with an injury. I want to say he was announced that he's out for the season. So Gabriel's interesting. I know last week he only had, I think it was 3 targets, but the 3 prior weeks he had at least 7 targets in each game. So he's been involved in this offense, and if the Bears have done anything, they've taken advantage of soft secondaries with Trubisky trying to boost his confidence. And Anthony Miller, I love his matchup. I really do. I think it's a phenomenal matchup. We don't know if K'Waun Williams is going to come back to the defense this week. He's missed the last 2. But I just feel like this is a softer secondary than people realize. Like Richard Sherman has been struggling as of late. Losing Witherspoon hurts. And the run defense with San Francisco, they've been really tough against the run all year too, even without Reuben Foster. So Gabriel is like that guy that, if you're looking in this range, you're looking for that guy that can pay off in one play. When Gabriel gets as many opportunities as he's been, I feel like he's one of those guys that I'd rather play over a Chris Conley, who basically it's touchdown or bust. Because, I want to say he's still, there's like one game this year where he's topped like 30 yards. So he hasn't been really consistent in that way. So I'd say Gabriel is my favorite play of that group.
Jeff, what is the deal with Michael Gallup? He was getting so many air yards, and then last week he just disappeared. Did the Cowboys disown him?
He played all snaps, like as many usual.
He's just he's a number 2 receiver. That's, I think, the deal. I don't really think there's anything here. He's a rookie receiver who is best suited in that number 2 role, and that's kind of what we get with him. You run that risk anytime you're looking at those guys that are number 2s and they're not in high-powered passing offenses. That's the volatility you get.
All right, guys, let's go quarterback position. And it is crazy that if you told me preseason we'd be talking about Tom Brady is a must-sit. Right now he's ECR 18. We're considering Josh Allen as the top streamer of the week, and we've got Baker Mayfield, Dak Prescott in the top 10. Let's start with those 2, okay? Baker Mayfield, Dak Prescott. If you've got to decide between the 2 of them, Jeff, who are you going with?
Man, I probably lean just slightly towards Dak Prescott. The nice thing about both of these teams is they both have something on the line. I mean, as remarkable as it is, the Browns are still in the playoff mix. They have pretty much one of the longest shots on the board, but still, Baker does a nice job. It's a nice matchup, but I feel a lot of Chubb in that game. I definitely do. Obviously a lot of Zeke against the Bucs because they struggle against the run, but they struggle against the run. So there could be some Dak Prescott with his legs as well, which is sort of one of the reasons it's held him back, in a few of these recent matchups. But still, I think it's really close, but Dak Prescott.
ECR has Baker Mayfield number 7, Dak Prescott number 8. Tags, where are you on these two? Would you start them both over Aaron Rodgers?
I have them both at 10 and 11, so I'm a little lower just because I think Jeff hit the hammer on the head. He nailed it, and that's Ezekiel Elliott and Nick Chubb are going to have fantastic games. They should dominate touches in those games. I don't think the game should be particularly close, to be honest with you. So I just feel like it's a game where neither of them are going to have to throw a whole lot. Now, against the Bengals, teams do average a whole lot of pass attempts, but I mean, if you go back to the first time they played, Baker threw just 26 times. I know he threw 4 touchdowns and he lit them up, and I'm sure he's going to want to do that to Hugh Jackson again. But at the same time, I think this is a massive Chubb game, and the same thing with Zeke. That's my concern for Dak. I think Dak's fine. I have him as a QB1 this week, and I would play Dak over Josh Allen, just slightly. I have him one spot. I have Josh Allen at 12. But I wouldn't play either of them over Aaron Rodgers, no.
Okay, so you've got Aaron Rodgers the highest. Jeff, who do you have, Aaron Rodgers or one of these two? Mayfield or Dak?
Yeah, one of these two. Both of them,
okay.
In fact. Yeah, it's not a pretty situation right now with Aaron Rodgers. And I think the moral here is bigger. You're probably not in your fantasy championship if you drafted Aaron Rodgers because you drafted Aaron Rodgers. You drafted him in the second round probably, which we preach year in and year out that you shouldn't be drafting quarterbacks early. This is exactly why. And it's not a knock on Rodgers. Give him the gold jacket. He's phenomenal. We know it. But drafting any quarterback that early is a very big time risk because something like this could happen. It's a lost season for the Packers as a whole. And entering this week, what is he? Is basically at the very edge of a top 10 fantasy quarterback.
He's a streamer.
Yeah, I can't believe it. But yes, I do have both of those guys ahead of Aaron Rodgers in the first pass of my rankings for this week. I have Rodgers at 10.
ECR has Rodgers at 9.
I just want to defend Rodgers in the fact that the matchup is just too good to pass up. In terms of the Jets, so their defense over the last 11 weeks, they've allowed multiple touchdowns in 9 of them. And there's been, in that time, over 11 games, that's a big sample size, there's only been one quarterback who's finished with fewer than 17 fantasy points against them. So I think you're going to get a high floor with Rodgers. You might not get the ceiling that you back in the day you would have gotten with him, but I think you're going to look at a 17 to 24 point output. And that, to me, that's solid QB1 production. And you don't have to worry about you don't have to worry about Jamal Williams completely taking over a game and, going off for 150 and 2, because I just don't think that he's got that in him. But I do think Rodgers is a solid floor. Now, if you were to ask me between Aaron Rodgers and Mitch Trubisky this week, I think it's a closer conversation. I would still go Rodgers, but I think Trubisky's a solid play this week.
Let's talk about those 3 rushing quarterbacks, okay? Lamar Jackson, we have at number 10, ECR. Josh Allen is 14. Mitch Trubisky, 13. Jeff, do you have a favorite of this group?
Trubisky might be the favorite of that group.
Me too.
And it's, again, it comes down to a lot of these decisions. Are they playing for something? Obviously, the Bears still, they're playing for something. There's no doubt about it. I don't mind the matchup. And what I love about Trubisky, and it was sort of, we kind of knew it from his college days, but it was almost kind of a pleasant surprise this year in this breakout year, is how much he does add with his legs. So I think, yeah, he'd be my guy.
There hasn't been as much lately since he came back from the injury, though. Do you think he runs this week? Just 39 yards in the last 2 games.
I don't know if he necessarily has to run, but it's just that added bonus. You're not expecting it with Lamar. It's just the added bonus that you get sometimes with Trubisky.
Tex, it sounds like you have Josh Allen of the group. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have Trubisky higher than Josh Allen, but I have Josh Allen at 12, Lamar Jackson at 13. Lamar Jackson is what he is. You kind of know at this point. He's finished in between the QB 11 and QB 15 every single start that he's made. So he's not offering you the massive upside. He's not throwing for a whole lot of yardage. He's not going to light the Chargers up through the air. That's not going to happen. But you're getting consistent production on the ground. So he's just a guy that's not gonna win you a fantasy championship, but he's probably not gonna lose it for you either. So Bobby, who would you go with if you had, Lamar Jackson or let's pretend you have Kirk Cousins or Lamar Jackson? Which one are you going to play?
Oh boy. I don't like Lamar Jackson this week. And the reason why is you look at his 5 games, Cincinnati, Oakland, Atlanta, Kansas City, Tampa. That's a list of teams we pick on. He gets the Chargers this week. He doesn't have 180 yards passing in any game. Sure, he's going to get his 70 on the ground. I also think he throws multiple interceptions. So I don't think his floor really is the 16 fantasy points we've seen. I think I would rather trust Kirk Cousins. With that said, you can probably pick up Josh Allen. So I really would prefer not to play Kirk Cousins either.
How about you, Jeff?
Man, these are decisions that you just hopefully don't have to make at this time of year.
Yeah.
The thing that I got to talk about Josh Allen here, because I'm not particularly high on him this week, but I think that, the big difference that between him and Lamar, because we know we get the rushing yards out of both, but Josh Allen showed last week, the problem is that his are improvised, his are scrambles. Lamar's are designed, and there's two issues there. First and foremost, scrambling is unpredictable. He had the rushing touchdown, so fine and dandy, but you have unpredictable production. But secondly, if you're scrambling too much in the NFL, like just go ask Robert Griffin, you're going to get killed. You're like, that's the difference between those and the design runs. The design runs with Lamar, every one of them that I see, he's doing things that are very smart on the field. He's making sure that he's covered up, that he's not going to get that big hit. Whereas if you're scrambling, you may not see that big hit coming. So there's some concerns there in the long term if he keeps that up with Allen. And of course, he just throws sometimes just throws those, prayers into the air. And like, anytime you do that in the NFL, a safety is going to intercept it. Like any time it's going to happen. So I don't want to have to use any of those guys, to be honest with you.
Unless you're Deshaun Watson. He always gets lucky on those. It's annoying.
That was Nick Foles in the Chip Kelly year. He just got lucky on way too many balls, and it happens, but eventually it catches up to you.
All right, we're going to move on to tight end in just a second, but first, I just have to ask one more player, Cam Newton. What do we do with him against Atlanta this week, Jeff?
I may have to fade him, honestly. I wasn't necessarily initially concerned by the shoulder injury, but you watch some of the throws on Monday night. He looked very labored. He always has that awkward throwing motion, but he looked very labored on those throws. And then the fact that it's officially out there, Rivera talked about it in the post-game presser about possibly shutting him down. Now, he said, we're not going to do that. And I mean, technically speaking, they're still in the playoff hunt too, but just barely. I mean, that's on the table, and it wouldn't be that outrageous. But anytime, if it happened, that is, but anytime that it is on the table, I kind of want to run away from that guy. And so I have him, right now I have him at 13, but that's sort of reluctant to even have him that high, but it is sort of a statement. I tried an initial pass of my rankings, try and make statements like, by the way, look at this, and here you go. Like, you've been using Cam Newton as a QB1 all season. Here's a statement that maybe you want to think twice about that this week.
Sure. Tags, you groaned. You don't think he's a good play?
I don't think you could play him confidently. And like when you look at the list of quarterbacks that are available on waiver wires right now, I mean,
he doesn't have any confidence. How could you play a guy like that?
Yeah, it's tough. I have him at 16 right now. I feel like it's too low just because I've been here before with Cam Newton where I've ranked him low, and then it's like all of a sudden he rushes for 2 touchdowns, but he's not running the ball very much recently. He's not
Why would you when you've got Christian McCaffrey, baby?
Yeah, and I think McCaffrey, what's weird, Bobby, is like I'm obviously not blaming Christian McCaffrey, but I'm saying that once they started to use him more in like that rushing role and like he's been posting those crazy numbers, that's when the Panthers started losing games.
Jeff, we talked about this a few weeks ago. I want your take. Are you taking Christian McCaffrey number 2 overall next year?
I typically save this for the first week of January to think about that. That is tempting. That is very tempting.
It's probably him or Zeke, right?
Yeah, Saquon is in the mix too. Obviously, I don't think there's going to be a rookie like Saquon next year. There's some interesting running backs, no doubt about it, but Saquon is just so special. It's really going to be interesting to consider all those, because now you kind of have to bump David Johnson down just because of the overall state of that offense, and I don't think they can turn that around in a year. And he's phenomenal, but you just can't trust him. Le'Veon Bell, wherever the heck he lands, won't be in that conversation for me next year. I don't think I take McCaffrey 2, but I don't think I let him slip past 3 or 4.
I think some people are actually going to be taking Mahomes in the top 15, maybe a tight end. What do you? Obviously, you hate the Mahomes thing, but what do you think about Kelsey at like number 13 or 14?
Not a problem with it. If you did that this year, you probably look like a genius now. I mean, I promoted the the early tight end premium approach, second, third round, and the three options were Ertz, Kelsey, and Gronk, but I preferred Gronk out of those guys, and that didn't work out well. But the tight end premium, it really did work this year if you nailed Kelsey. I think, people talk about we should get rid of kickers. I mean, forget that. I want to get rid of tight ends. I think this year, at this point, if there are 6 options, and if you don't have one of those 6, you're guessing and praying for a touchdown every week. If you don't have Gronk, Kelsey, Ertz, Ebron, Cook, Kittle, if you don't have those guys, then you're kind of screwed, and I think it makes a lot more sense. And
you can add Hunter Henry to the list next year, but then it's just 7.
Oh boy, Stephen A. Smith is getting excited. Hunter Henry, man. But yeah, maybe add him in, hopefully add him in, but I don't see it getting any better anytime soon at tight end.
Jeff, I remember you coming on the show in the preseason and talking to us about that, and I was like, man, it makes sense, but I can't do it because I got to get Doug Baldwin. Dude, I should have listened to you. That one hurts. Let's move on over to tight end. And I mean, there's so much volatility, there's really no point in talking about it. But people do want to know, after those top 6, who do we have? Evan Ingram against Indianapolis is getting a lot. I think he's a pretty clear start. But then we get to Cameron Brate. Hasn't really done anything this year. David Njoku, so up and down. Trey Burton. If you've got one of these 3 tags, who are you going with?
Yeah, Cameron Brate's the play. I mean, you mentioned Evan Ingram. I just want to he'd play for me, especially if Odell Beckham's out. Like, his target share has been really good with Beckham out of the lineup, so he'd be the clear-cut play. If Beckham's out, it would be a conversation between him and Cameron Brate if Beckham did play, because I think Brate's matchup against Dallas isn't as bad as the wide receivers, and I know he hasn't seen a whole lot of targets this year. I think there's just one game where he saw more than 4 targets, but again, tight ends, you're looking for those touchdowns, and we obviously know that Jameis Winston favors him in the red zone, so I'd say Cameron Brate.
I've got Njoku just a little bit ahead of him going up against Cincinnati. I know Cameron Brate's got the touchdown upside, and Dallas is a decent matchup, but Cincinnati's a great matchup. Jeff, who do you have at the 3?
Yeah, Njoku actually did take it to Cincinnati. Before that game, I had Rich Gannon on the SiriusXM show, and I said, do you expect Njoku, the Browns, to attack the seam with him because of the deficiencies at linebacker? And he's like, oh, absolutely. And they, in fact, did do that. So it's close between the two. As I said, though, I lean towards who's going to score the touchdown, which, good luck to you if you can really predict that. But just given the end zone work that Brate has seen, I'm going to lean him just slightly. But it's brutal. I have him back to back. I don't think it's an easy decision. It's almost a coin flip. I've told people to just, if you have any one of those tight ends from basically tight end, well, you can, Ingram, if OBJ doesn't go, then he might be in that top tier category. But from tight end 8 to about tight end 19, just write all their names on some index cards, stand at the top of some steps, throw them up in the air, and whichever one makes it furthest down the steps, go with that guy.
I like that call. Do you have Trey Burton in your top 10? Because a lot of people are thinking, Trey Burton's just horrible. I'd rather play Jimmy Graham than him. I don't know. I've still got him top 10.
I have Matt 10, so yeah.
I don't feel good about it.
Nope, not at all.
Tags, if you have to decide Austin Hooper, Vance McDonald, or pick up one of these bums behind them, are you picking someone up?
Uzama sucks. Like, it's terrible. Like, you don't like playing him, but at the same time, it's like with Tyler Boyd unlikely to play, John Ross isn't going to see 10 targets. Joe Mixon's not involved in the passing game as much as he should be. It's really tough to pass up Uzama's volume, and like Jeff mentioned it, you can kind of throw things up in the air and kind of hope that you land on something, but I tend to try and follow the guys that I know are going to get 6 targets and just hope for the best. And Uzama's gotten that more often than he hasn't, and knowing like the game script here where Cleveland should be in the lead, I expect Cincinnati to have to throw a little bit. Hooper's coming off a knee injury that he was terrible last week. He only saw 1 target. He dropped it in the end zone. He wasn't good.
Against Arizona, though.
I don't know if I trust him.
Yeah. Carolina's such a good matchup.
The one name I'd like to bring up, Jeff, is Blake Jarwin. Jarwin's someone that he has had 7 targets in each of the last 2 weeks. He's turned them into 11 catches for 101 yards. He's been better. Tampa Bay has allowed a top 12 tight end in 11 of 14 games this year. As you know, the safety play there has been pretty brutal with the injuries they've had. But what do you think about Blake Jarwin? Is he someone that people should actually think about as a streamer?
Let's put it this way. Because I like the numbers and I like the idea. If it was week 7,
right?
Sure. Yeah.
But right now, here's the tendency that a lot of people have is you're sitting here and you're stewing, and there's no Thursday night football, so you're stewing even longer. You're at work, you're staring at your lineup. You're at home, you're on the toilet, you're staring at your lineup. And what ends up happening with anything is if you look at something long enough, you're going to make changes. You're going to try and get cute. You're going to try and outsmart fantasy football. And, 99 times out of 100, you're not going to be able to do that. So if you're in that desperate need, you would really have to be hurting to use Blake Jarwin, then yes. But otherwise, I think you're probably just best suited with going with what you have, playing the guy who got you to this point and rolling with it. So Blake Jarwin, a back end tight end too, sure. I just don't want to have to be in a position where I'm streaming this week with the fantasy championship on the line.
All right, let's go DST, and my favorite streamer is Miami against Cody Kessler. I've mentioned this before. Jacksonville has multiple touchdowns just 4 times all season. It's not happening with Cody Kessler, and he's probably going to throw some interceptions, one of the worst offensive lines in football. I think that Miami is a very safe play. ECR has them number 8. I've got them number 4. Jeff, who's your favorite streamer at DST?
If somehow Tennessee was still available, because they were out there and I think, 40% of leagues or so, then obviously that's the no-brainer. But if they aren't and Miami isn't, I think we can dumpster dive a little. We dumpster dove last week with Atlanta, and it worked. And they were the number 31 fantasy defense entering the week, which shows us fantasy defense scoring is broken, first and foremost. But that's maybe a topic for the offseason. I think we can go with Cleveland against Cincinnati. Cleveland has something on the line. As I mentioned, Jabril Peppers playing great football, and that helps on the back end of that defense. They can get after the quarterback, and the quarterback that they're going to get after is Jeff Driscoll. So
he's the worst, isn't he?
I love it. I love that play. I think, they're a top 10 play. They're probably out there on waivers. They were out there in about 90% of leagues entering Tuesday night. So I can't imagine that many folks picked them up. If you still have a need and Miami is gone and the Titans are gone, why not the Browns?
I used the Falcons in every single GPP lineup I used last week, but I killed it with Michael Gallup. Oh, what a waste. Tags, who do you like at DST?
I like both of your guys' selections. They're both good. And the Cowboys, prior to the waiver wires clearing, they were less than 40% owned for whatever reason. But the Cowboys against Tampa, Jameis Winston, we've seen him before. He can throw 3 interceptions in a game. He can throw a pick 6. It's kind of like that Cutler thing where it's just like you're going to play a guy. The Cowboys have offered a high floor throughout the season. They boast one of the best sack rates in the NFL. They don't allow many points. I think there's one game this year where they've allowed more than 24 points. They just shut down Andrew Luck in terms of his passing. But I don't think the Bucs have the run game to do what Marlon Mack did. So I just think the Cowboys are a high floor streamer. But the Browns are a fantastic one. The Titans are even better if you can get them. But yeah, I think they're all solid options. I think there's plenty of streamers this week.
All right, guys, bold prediction time, and I'm going to go first. Tags, you're not going to like this one. 49ers are going to beat the Bears at home this week.
I don't believe that's true.
You know what? Vegas has this as a 4-point spread. That's not so bad. 49ers have been playing good football. They beat the Seahawks last week. They beat the Broncos before that. I think there's a chance here. Jeff, what do you think? Is this crazy?
No, it isn't crazy. You mentioned the line, obviously. It opened at 4, though. It hasn't moved. So I don't know, but I don't think it's that crazy at all.
Especially with the way Trubisky's been playing. He doesn't look like he's 100%. I could see him having another rough game, and San Francisco just keeps destroying their draft position.
Yeah, no Nick Bosa for you.
All right, Tags, what are you going with?
All right, my bold prediction that the Patriots actually lose a 3rd straight game. This is bold. I'm not saying it's going to happen. This is a bold prediction, but I think there's a non-0% chance that the Bills just kind of walk into New England and beat them.
Wouldn't that be incredible?
It's a divisional game. Tom Brady hasn't been able to do it lately. Their run game hasn't been able to get going. So crazier things have happened this NFL season.
So basically you're saying you love Robert Foster.
No, I don't.
Okay, Jeff, do you have a bold prediction for us?
Well, first and foremost, though, I think maybe not win, and I know I'm not that good against the spread, but Buffalo plus 13?
Yeah.
Oh, man, yeah.
Yeah, tingling a little bit with that, the spidey senses are, but I don't think it's bold to say that Philadelphia wins the game, that home game against the Texans. As good as the Texans have been, that line continues to shift in the Eagles' favor. But a bold prediction, let's do this. Let's say that Derrick Henry goes up over 200 yards again this week.
Oh, man. I love that.
2 times in the last 3 weeks. I'm trained to not be bold, but the way that he's been playing is phenomenal. They finally figured out, oh, wait, you give him the ball. Okay. I think he goes off yet again this week.
If he has another big week, where's he going in drafts next year? Second round?
Probably. I can't see him going any higher than that, although recency bias is going to probably cloud some of the rankers in the industry. There's no doubt about it. But we just have to, we have to also consider the fact that there was a good chunk of the season where he did pretty much next to nothing. Maybe it's Matt LaFleur finally getting his feet underneath of him as a play caller. But I think he'll probably be in that range.
That is really funny.
He was a third-round pick this last year, though. Let's not forget, 35 overall.
You're right. All right, guys, that's all for today's show. Jeff, thank you again for taking the time to come on. I know it's a super busy week for you. We really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, guys.
And thanks to the sponsor of today's show, PristineAuction.com. That's Pristine. Check out what they have for you and make sure to let them know Fantasy Pros sent you. And don't forget to sign up for the signed David Johnson helmet at FantasyPros.com/contest. Also, check out the new site, BettingPros.com. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening and enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.